Now, I'm Jeff. I'm going to be sharing some real customer stories, practical insights that we hear from working with semiconductor customers every day. Rob Conant, AI's CEO, is going to walk through why we think 2026 is a breakaway year for the AI adoption in semiconductors. He'll talk about three levers: support AI, sales AI, and channel AI, and talk about some case studies with real ROI data. And as a reminder, this is designed to be practical and actionable. So our goal is that when you leave today, you have a sense of what you can do in the next 90 days. That's it. Rob, let's get us started.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Great to see so many old friends on the call today and new friends as well. So looking forward to sharing our perspective. Now, Jeff and I have a long history in the semiconductor space. So we have been deep in this space. My last company was acquired by Infineon. Jeff started the Wi-Fi Alliance, has worked with a lot of the leaders in the industry over the years. So we're deep in this space, and we saw pretty early on the impact that AI is going to have in the space. But I got to say, over the course of the past year, my expectations for AI and semiconductors has just gone up. There's a tremendous opportunity in front of us. And so we're excited that you all wanted to join and talk about it more today. So first, a little bit about the semiconductor, what's happening in the semiconductor, the AI industry in general. Let me share my screen here. What's happening in the semiconductor industry in general. AI is rapidly advancing from a technical perspective. This chart shows, time on the bottom, and it shows the speed of improvement of AI in a lot of different domains. Just exponentially increasing rate of advancement of AI. Phenomenally powerful technology. And that is coming out of that. And because of that improvement in capability, there's a tremendous amount of money flowing into data centers to deploy AI. The people who are allocating this money see how important this is going to be to society, how much that demand is going to increase. And so we're talking about trillions of dollars of investment in data centers to serve AI. So just a tremendous flow of money into this space. And you see not only money flowing in for the infrastructure, but also money flowing in for the uses of AI across many different industries. This isn't semiconductor specific, but one of the things I've just been floored by is you look at some of the other fastest growing companies of all time. There's a company called Cursor in the software development space that's gone from 0 to 100 million in record time. And Anthropic, 9x per year. OpenAI, 4x per year off a high base. So tremendous concentration of activity and money into the AI space because of the power of the technology and what it can do. And of course, all of that money flowing into data centers is creating a tremendous demand for energy. So we're talking about hundreds of terawatts of electricity just for AI. So for comparison, so this is saying about, out here in 2030, almost 650 terawatts of energy dedicated to AI. The US demand in total is 4,000 terawatts. And so you're talking a substantial portion, that's over 10% of the total US electricity demand today is going to be dedicated to AI in 2030. So the huge portion of our economy is reorienting towards AI because it has this tremendous capability. This is happening extremely quickly in many different fields. Now, we in the semiconductor industry have traditionally been the ones that are in charge of these exponential changes. We've been sitting on Moore's Law, driving Moore's Law for, I don't know how many years now, 50 years. But I've got to say, AI is putting Moore's Law to shame. In the AI industry, capacity or capability is doubling every 7 months versus 18 months for Moore's Law, right? It's doubling every 7 months. It's actually, and it actually expanded. This doubling 7 months is this orange line right here. They actually think that it's now doubling closer to every 5 months with the recent advances. Just tremendous improvement in the capability. And at the same time, there's been a price decrease of 240x in 18 months. It's hard for us to wrap our minds around the speed of improvement of this technology. The concentration of money in this space, the improvement of the technology, all of that means from a societal perspective, it's going to be hugely important. And for us on this call, for us in the semiconductor industry, the question is, what does this mean for us? What does this mean for our industry? Now, we've taken a look at this, and this is our take on how this is going to impact the semiconductor industry. So there are four items on this chart. The top one is related to data centers and robotics, basically increasing market demand. So there's a tremendous pull. I'd say as I talk to my friends in the semiconductor space, a lot of the market demand increase is around energy and robotics, pulling towards edge AI, for example, with robotics. But 5 trillion in data center spend, 25% CAGR in that market. So if you're in the power space, power regulations, servers, anything to do with data centers, that's going to be a booming market for a long time because there's going to be a tremendous amount of money flowing into that market. If you're in, People are forecasting a tremendous amount of semiconductor content in robotics as well. 30% CAGR in robotics over the course of the next 10 plus years are the forecast that we look at. On the bottom side, the big fabs and semiconductor manufacturers are looking at optimizing COGS, a lot of operational benefits for fabs, so increasing yield, improving automation, maybe identifying ways to continue to follow Moore's law. So a lot of activity happening on that end. Most of the companies that we deal with, those are market forces. Those are changes in the market dynamics, but they're not really under the direct control of the companies that we work with. Semiconductor companies, for the most part, are within that dotted line box here. And for them, the impact on the market are number one, accelerating product development, and number two, accelerating sales. Now, accelerating product development, that's a market related, that's going to impact the whole market. Companies that do well there are going to bring out more, better products faster. They'll bring out the right products. They'll be able to do that with automated design tools. They'll be able to do it at lower cost. So they'll have a higher diversity of products, moving towards maybe smaller volume products, maybe more highly differentiated. So a lot of activity on that side. The sales side is changing as well. So the companies and this is what we're going to talk about mostly today, because the companies that we see that are active in that space are increasing their market share, are increasing their win rate, and are increasing their customers' velocity. And the companies that do that well will be the companies that win in this next phase. Now, these two areas, product development and sales, are under the direct control of you all as executives in semiconductor companies. And so those are the two areas to focus on. Let's
So,
specifically talk about accelerating sales and what's happening there.
so Rob,
Yeah.
before we jump in here, we're going to do our survey.
Okay.
And the question we have for you is, where is your organization today in its AI journey? Are you exploring, piloting, scaling, optimizing, or have you not started yet?
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, eager to see where everybody is on this phase. For EPT we're clearly optimizing, continuously optimizing. Um, so accelerating sales is a key thing. Now, the question for all of us is, Are you ready? Are you ready to do this? We're going to see. You can already see coming up here. Most of the companies are in kind of piloting, scaling phase. Um, so
Yeah.
interested, but maybe not really driving it to ROI yet. And so we have today we're going to share some thoughts and practical tips on what this can look like for 2026. So number one, I think the most important thing is this is important. It's only when companies acknowledge the importance of AI that they actually focus their energies on it, provide clear mechanisms for making decisions, drive the organization to do things, allocate the resources to make it happen. And this is, we see this already with the companies that we're working with. So first of all, a little bit of extra EBITDA has a huge increase in enterprise value in the semiconductor industry today. It's 10 to 25x. So if you can reduce costs, if you can increase your win rate a little bit, it can have a tremendous increase in enterprise value. One of our customers, we ran the numbers for them. We determined that the the AI sales potential for them is $1 million per day in value. If they do it tomorrow instead of today, it's $1 million lost, forever lost. If they do it a week from now, $7 million forever lost. So huge impact on the economics of the business. Uh, Second is the companies that move most quickly are going to be better at doing this than their competitors, and they will not only be better at the beginning, they will be better for a long time because learning uh, collects on itself, builds on itself, and we're seeing that already with many of our customers. Learning compounds, especially in this industry where once you win a socket, that pays off over many years. The companies that increase their win rate today have a benefit for the next decade. And so it's really critical for semiconductor companies to capture this window of opportunity with AI today. And the most important thing, so after recognizing the importance, you have to start. You don't have to start perfectly. It doesn't really matter, or you can't necessarily know what that end state is going to be when you start, but the key thing is to start. Don't delay that start. Get moving now. All right. So the semiconductor market. Now, we've we've been many of us on this call, and a lot of us in EPDAI have been in different kinds of businesses. The semiconductor industry is one where there's a lot of work that happens in the design in and design win process. Really, your costs are determined there. Your growth is determined there, and the money is realized later on in that production process. So, and that sales design and design win process, that's complicated and expensive. It's expensive because traditionally you have to apply people to working with customers to help them in their design, to help them in their product selection, evaluation, qualification, prototyping, testing, finally getting them to production, and that's when the money starts to flow towards you. Um, and so and a lot of the business has been built on the idea that it's so expensive to support those customers that you can only support the biggest and most valuable customers. That's a tried and true equation in the semiconductor space. However, with AI, things are switching. What you'll find, if you look at what's happened in the software space, there's been a tremendous amount of change in the speed of software development. That is coming for hardware as well. So you're going to see a lot more diversity of customers. You're going to see a lot more designs, and you're going to see a compression of that time scale so that people are designing those products faster. And as a semiconductor company, how are you going to support that? Are you going to hire 50 additional AEs, 1,000 additional AEs? What you'd really like to do is you'd like to have an AE with every customer, and you'd like to have a marketing person with every salesperson so that you can help your customers execute effectively, but it's not economical. You just can't do it. But with AI, it's really changing the equation. So three levers for getting ROI with AI. The first one is apps engineering support. So helping your application engineers 10x their capability. So again, if you during that pre-selling, that pre-design win, design in process, if you can help your customers evaluate your products faster, recognize what will and what won't work, maybe even do that integration, do that validation, the faster you can help them do that, the less window there is for competition. Your competition gets in the door when there's a delay or when there's an uncertainty. And if you had an application engineer sitting with your customer every minute, there would be no delay, there would be no uncertainty. You would get those deals closed faster. But for a lot of customers, you just can't afford to do that. And a lot of the application engineers maybe can't get those answers quick enough. They're overloaded, they've got a lot going on. So the opportunity is to be much faster there to close that window on the competition and help your customers design faster. Second is sales. All of us have seen great salespeople go into accounts. They know the account. They have a good relationship and trust with that customer. They align the strategy of the company to the strategy of the customer, and they capture every socket that they can within that account. That's a great salesperson. It's hard to always do that. Every salesperson has a lot going on. Maybe they've got too many accounts, especially if you're dealing with anything in the long tail. It's just really hard to do that. It's expecting a kind of a superhuman capability of salespeople, which is not a reasonable expectation. With AI, you can help 10x those salespeople so that salespeople can be like the best salespeople. And third is distributor and customer support. So moving into the long tail requires products to be easier to sell and easier to buy. And you want those customers and the distributors to be engaged. So we've traditionally done that through websites, data sheets, great documentation, application notes. That stuff is expensive to develop. Maybe it's not always right. The companies that I've been in, it's a constant struggle to get the documentation to be clear enough for the broader market. It's just really hard. And that the broader market meaning both supporting those customers directly, but also supporting the distributors to support those customers. Distributors have a lot more products they have to support. So it's hard for them. With AI, there's an opportunity to transform how that works. Um, Jeff, do you want to talk about experience of one of our customers in the
Sure.
apps
Thank
engineering area?
Yep. So this is an interesting case study. That's a customer. It's not a semiconductor customer, but the takeaways are very relevant. And I'll frame this chart by saying sales actually doubled over the course of the year and a half that's represented here. So what we did with this customer is introduced a AI drafted tickets response system and started the AI performance improvement process. And then over time, what they did is they introduced both an AI contextual help in the product and then AI support assistant on their website. So a year and a half later, the number of tickets has gone down by 47%. So they're spending less on ticket support. The amount of engagement with customers has gone up 6.5 fold. So now you have that much more information back and forth between you and your customer. And then, of course, the numbers would show that 91% of these engagements are AI. So you can actually understand that data. So what the results basically speak to is you've got this much more responsive apps engineering capability at a lower cost.
That's great. Thanks, Jeff. I love the fact that when we started talking to companies, they thought, I don't I don't want my customers to stop talking to me. I don't want to lose touch with my customers. I want more engagement. I just want to spend less money on it. And that's what we've been able to do here. So real success of the team, Jeff. That's great to see. Thank you. Um, so this has evolved quite a bit. I know seeing that many of you on the call, we've had some conversations with you about what you're doing. A lot of companies start with, ChatGPT, right? We've rolled out ChatGPT, or we've rolled out Copilot. 70, something like, Jeff, 70% of Fortune 500 have used Copilot or are
Yep.
using Copilot, right?
Yep.
Um, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about something a little bit different, quite a bit different, actually. So that basic chat GPT gives you some general knowledge, and it can be super helpful. That's a can be a great use case for AI within companies. But to do real application engineering, you need to go through multiple steps. So the first phase, what we started with in that chart, was retrieval augmented generation, which is basically a library of knowledge that the AI can pull from. Um, Most of the companies that we've talked to who have the biggest semiconductor companies, a lot of them have played around with things internally and maybe even rolled some things out internally, some kind of RAG systems. And you can get to the point where you have some impressive answers based on that. Now, unfortunately, it's extremely limited to the quality of your knowledge, and your knowledge will never be good enough to make this suitable for broader deployment because it requires having being able to look at the data from multiple different dimensions. So, for example, with RAG, asking a question like, what voltage, what's the current output of this power transformer? You can ask that specific question and do a good job of that. But if you say, show me the power transformers with output between this and that, it will never ever be able to do that. Never ever. Not possible. And that's a normal question that a human will ask. And so RAG is helpful, but it really is an early step. Moving towards what we call augmented RAG, where you start to synthesize across different knowledge documents, is a step in the right direction. We hit that probably year ago ish, a year and a half ago maybe. The next one is learning. So um, learning from historical tickets. So just as an example, we've ingested over 2 million community forum posts from all of your companies and more. And we've learned from all of that. Every time we plug into a customer system, we anonymize all of the historical tickets and answers that people have provided to support tickets. All of that kind of comes into learning. We do continuous closed loop learning for agent in the loop answers. So if people are doing support tickets, every time we provide an answer, we see the agent's answer, we compare them, figure out why was it different. So automated learning. And then the next step, the step we're in right now, is continuous self-improvement, where every time we see an answer that we don't think is exactly right, we adjust the way the system operates to improve it. Now, that is, people talk about the singularity. In AI support, that's really the singularity. You're getting to the point where the system is self-improving based on its own assessment or user assessments. We've found that that is phenomenally successful at improving the quality of answers to the point where you can actually really provide great AI application engineering for customers, augmented with AI. So it's super exciting stuff happening there. Happy to dig in deeper on that if you're interested. The next one is AI sales. So, I've spent a lot of my career in sales. Jeff spent a lot of his career in sales. Um, as a technologist, when I was getting my PhD, I didn't have a ton of respect for sales. I have grown to believe that sales is one of the most critical functions in an organization. Great technology still doesn't sell itself. You really need to understand the customer, and you need to position the technology to suit what the customer is trying to accomplish. That's a hard job. It's a hard job. And in semiconductor companies, um, salespeople often don't have the support necessary to really do that job well. What we've what we're seeing companies do is use their data. That might be voice of the customer data from emails or support tickets or sales data or web chat or whatever, plus their documentation, plus the public information, to combine that with agentic AI so that they have the tools necessary to do a great job of selling. And we're going to show you a little bit about what that can look like. Now, if some of you have work in companies where you might have key accounts, $100 million plus accounts, there you might have marketing people who do this work for you, right? Who are going out and reading the earnings reports on these companies, who are doing detailed stakeholder management to understand whether you're talking to the right people, who are aggregating information from across different channels within the company or different data sources within your company to make sure that you really understand what's happening for that customer, or looking at the competitive information and doing a customer specific battle card so that you can really win in a particular socket. That's the best case. Now, what fraction of your customers do you do that for? A small fraction. With AI, you'll do it for everyone. Every salesperson will do it for everyone continuously. That's a huge change. Um, and Jeff, maybe you can walk people through and show people what this can look like. You're muted.
So this is a screen from what we call our deal room that helps customers understand the their customer much deeper and richer. We create a background that talks about what the customer, what you as a semiconductor vendor are selling to your customers, or I'm sorry, you're trying to understand how to best sell your products to those customers. So we tell you the strategies that they're pursuing. We take you through what their platforms are, and then we help match the technology that you're building to your customers' strategies and their products.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Um, yeah, this is something that where what we've found is combining with the AI that's available here allows salespeople to really deeply understand where those companies are, what their strategies are, and how to align. And in fact, like this is an example of a deep line by line comparison of one product against another product in a particular sale to a particular customer. Um, all based in this case, all based on public data. Um, when if a company were to have private data in here, it can be private data as well. But this is every salesperson I've talked to wishes they had a customer specific battle card for every deal. I've never talked to a marketing person who would ever do that. Too expensive, too time consuming. Um, excuse me. But with AI, that's totally possible. It's something that salespeople can have every day. And not only that, it every time an email comes in from a customer, if it says, "Hey, this customer really deeply cares about audio processing. They don't really care about the number of tops, or they only need whatever 4 tops." This battle card will update itself automatically, as if the marketing person was listening in on the call. Tremendously powerful. And I gotta say, this is scratching the surface of what AI will do for sales in semiconductor. But you can kind of get a sense of from that where it's going. Another example, this is um, many of the companies that we talk to are large that we work with. I guess we didn't mention this, but we're working with 7 multi-billion-dollar semiconductor companies. Um, Many of these companies see cross-selling as a critical strategic initiative. Cross-selling, the challenge of cross-selling is understanding the customer's system architecture, understanding the different component opportunities. What are the sockets and how do you win in that socket? That is a really tough assignment for a salesperson to understand all of that. And so you end up with 5, 10, 20 people across the company who have to somehow put their heads together, decide that it's important enough to work on it, put their heads together, and then build out that view. Not realistic. It's just not realistic. Nobody has the time. You'd spend all your time debating whether it's important or not. So it's not viable within most companies today. with AI, this is something that was generated automatically and dynamically for this application. It shows the different subsystems. It shows the different components within the subsystem. If this was tied into a particular customer, it would show the specific products that you could recommend in that case. And if there's a competitor, if the salesperson identifies a competitor, it would show a sales guide, how to win. So now, instead of just winning one socket, your salesperson can be aware of the other sockets and can go out and fight and win those other sockets. That can lead to a substantially higher win rate, maybe even opportunities you weren't involved in, and higher market share, which if you get in there and do that more aggressively than the competition, those sockets will pay off for many years to come. So really another exciting application. Now, those are a couple different views, but all of that is based on this data and these agents, but there are other use cases as well. We actually find that most of the semiconductor companies we work with are interested in tailoring the solution to fit their specific requirements. That maybe they have their own sales process, their own value recognition framework, their own review process, or maybe they need executive plans before they go in on calls. There's so many different use cases that companies can implement with this. It's going to change the way sales operates. Um, the last lever that we'll talk about today is distributor and customer engagement. So, we've talked, a lot of companies that we work with have kind of think about the top customers, the key accounts, the middle tier, which is companies that you might still touch, but maybe you're not developing custom products for, you're not that close with them, maybe the volume's not that large. And then there's a long tail. So we've talked a lot about how to better support top customers, how to accelerate the product into the middle tier, but the long tail is going to increase in size and importance in this next phase as engineering gets automated. And semiconductor companies, many semiconductor companies struggle with this long tail because it requires either great documentation, great distributors who really understand the products, or very easy to use products. It's hard to support that long tail. It's just hard. And with AI, it's really a radical shift. Um, and that radical shift can entail two things. One is providing self-serve capabilities for customers. So in the industry, through I'm not going to date myself here, but when I started in the industry with those data books, we basically copied those data books onto the web, and that's what we have today. This next phase is putting all of that data into an AI so that I have an applications engineer, an AI powered application engineer at my disposal all of the time. That's going to enable the long tail in a totally different way. And the semiconductor companies that are making that possible and are engaging with distributors to make that possible for them are going to gain market share in that long tail, are going to learn more quickly than their competitors, are going to have their data built so that AI can ingest it and process it effectively, are going to provide better support, are going to get more market share. So just a tremendous, a lot of innovation happening in that space as well. Um, we can we'll share around. You'll see something around the end of this year where companies are actually doing AI powered uh, part search based on natural language, which is going to change the engineering design process. There's just a ton of exciting activities in that space. Direct message me or Jeff, and we can get on a call and talk in more detail about what's happening there. All right. So Jeff, do you want to talk a little bit about the build buy choice that semiconductor
Sure,
companies are
sure.
making?
So one of the things that we've observed is that the sales and support use cases are typically the ones that organizations work on first. And we have one customer, not necessarily in the semiconductor space, that's got 8 different use cases they've already enabled with our platform. So so the opportunity here is huge. And companies that we have worked with in the semiconductor space, as Rob mentioned earlier, typically have invested in some type of AI effort, typically around technical support. So the challenges there are that an internal team is never going to be capable of moving at the same speed as a vendor, a software vendor in the industry. And so, why by the time the internal team has shipped their product and figured out how to support that internally, they have missed the opportunity to both move faster with that application and to move on to new use cases as well. Not only that, they've probably spent millions to build that they did not necessarily need to spend, and they would have spent over years if they had actually contracted with an external vendor. And then what happens is not only are those companies not learning fast enough from the use case that they're building or from the information that they've got, they're not leveraging that performance cycle that Rob talked about earlier. So, not taking advantage of the continuous improvement nature of AI. So, the challenges of keeping pace are huge. The political reality is that once you've invested heavily in your own engineering team, it makes it that much harder to switch to an external vendor. And so the observation here is, we're at an inflection point in the industry. It should be clear that there are going to be experts. The experts are going to move at the speed of the industry. Otherwise, we won't survive, right? And so partnering really is the strategy that makes the most sense. And you want to obviously do that maintaining control of your data. You want to do that in a way that optimizes the overall performance and goals of your company. But at the end of the day, what it enables you to do is to focus your engineers on your product, not necessarily chasing AI innovation.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Yeah, the one that you mentioned earlier, that company took their AI people and pointed them at driving the ROI of AI, and they just did a phenomenal job. So this kind of partnership where we ended up engaging with their AI experts internally worked extremely well. So I think we're going to see that in other semiconductor companies as well, where they have an internal effort, and those people we end up partnering with the teams that did those things to drive the next wave. So really, there's going to be a lot of movement. Really exciting time. Um, okay, so 2026. What's going to happen in 2026? What do we recommend? Uh, like we said before, number one thing is start. Don't wait. If somebody tries to tell you that you should optimize all of your data before you start, don't do it. You need to start because you will learn through the beginning process where the value is for you, which may be different from where you expect it to be. You may discover things. You will discover what the issues are. You can't know what those issues are until you start. And we've seen this over and over again. So number one is start. And we typically recommend doing that. The areas that we see that are the biggest value prop are application engineering and sales. Those will be the number one, revenue driver and cost, uh, really revenue driver in both cases is the driver. So we recommend starting. Second is measure. So the company in general will insist on having a great ROI to roll things out and scale. So, looking at the polling data, the mode here is exploring. Most of you are saying your company is in the exploring phase. So if you're in that group, roughly kind of 40-ish%, if you're in that group, you gotta figure out how to start. So hopefully these first 6 slides that we presented about the speed of the industry can help arm you to have those conversations internally about the importance of this and how big this is and how you need to start. Okay. Figure out what those barriers are, knock them down and start. All right. A bunch of you are in the piloting phase. The next one is piloting phase. So there you're experimenting with things, trying to figure out what works. So that's great. Measure it, figure out what works. And then, some fraction, a smaller fraction of you are in the scaling phase, moving into real production. Um, I think that is where the leaders are today. They're in the scaling phase. I don't think anyone is in any companies are really in that phase where they're optimizing across the company, because the technology is changing so quickly. You saw the one that Jeff presented. They've gone through multiple generations. They are still scaling. They are transforming the way their company operates based on this AI. So, even when you get an AI out and people are using it extensively, it's going to take a while to go through the organizational changes that you're going to see when you really roll out the AI, and it's really being embraced within the company. One of the biggest, that this last one I think is really important, um, and so it's sort of overarching. We have found that for any real enterprise deploying AI, it's critical that you be able to have visibility into what the AI is doing and control over the AI. Visibility and control. We put that together into what we call AI performance management, which is allowing your AI experts, so that, in the case of the example that Jeff gave, the AI experts within the company, their job is really to manage the AI to deliver the result. We provide the AI, they manage the AI to deliver that result. That's very company specific. It's really about understanding your products, understanding your policies, understanding how you talk about things, understanding how your customers think about things, understanding your applications. So that expertise that really is within you as a company is where the asset that you're creating lives. That AI performance management team is the team that creates that asset. It's like if you think about a large enterprise, it's like the standard operating processes of the business. The SOPs for AI are managed by these AI teams, and you really need to develop those SOPs for your own business, in order to be effective. And so it's really critical that you do that well, especially as you're scaling. So we think that's important. And again, we're supposed to get into Q&A now. We don't have a ton of time on this today, but this is an area that's near and dear to our hearts. We see AI as becoming the critical coworkers for your team, the critical team members for your company over the course of the next 3 years. You need to be able to manage them effectively, and that's what this AI performance management is all about. So with that, Jeff, did you want to add anything on this topic? Uh, Go ahead, you're muted.
I think we should move to the Q&A.
Okay, let's do it.
All
Munzer,
right.
what you got?
So before we do that, before you ask a question, Munzer, there are a couple links in the resources area of the Zoom webinar session. And if you click on this resources area, there's some links. So a couple links that you might explore. So one of them is our next webinar. So we're going to dig in specifically on OEM sales. So go deeper into this sales topic, what happens for sales. This is not going to be semiconductor specific, but it's really OEM sales. A lot of commonalities across industrial OEM and semiconductor. So feel free to register for that. We'd love to have you. A second link is a white paper that we wrote that has some of the content that we presented today. And then there's another link if you'd like to have a direct session with us to dig in deeper on any particular topic. We'd be happy to do that. You can click on that link and schedule a consultation. So happy to meet with you.
And just a quick commercial on the next webinar. We'll actually demo the platform and go a little bit deeper into some customer implementations for that as well.
Okay, Munzer, take it away.
All right, great. We have our first question. What is the implementation time for AI, considering that semiconductor companies have diverse portfolio?
All right, maybe I'll start with that one.
Yep.
So, um, so one of the things to recognize, is that large semiconductor companies they can have 100, 200, 300,000 pages of information on their website. So incredibly diverse portfolio. One of our customers has 137,000 parts. Um, so we can actually scrape all of that information and walk into a new customer on day one, able to answer questions about a customer's products better than anybody at that customer site can. So that gives us a huge leg up. Obviously, that's not an implementation, but it allows us to be product experts from day one. And then what we do from there is actually a pilot, just as Rob described. And typically, they're 90 days. That can be anywhere from 30 to 180 days, depending on, what is the use case and what's the complexity of the product and what's the sales cycle for the customer. But in those 90 days, what we'll do is we'll identify typically the highest priority use case. We'll work with a Tiger team and we will understand how can this application scale for that group and more broadly across the company. So we can typically get to a production rollout within a 90-day pilot.
And great, Jeff. And let me add, sort of to address that same question from a different perspective. Um, we work with many of the biggest companies. One of the companies that we work with has 40 divisions. We started in that company with a particular division, and we launched a use case that was specific to them. Um, they don't really have a central AI team that's driving this across the industry. They're doing it basically division by division. It's a very decentralized company. That's one way to do it, and that works fine. Um, we run into different issues as we sort of aggregate up across the divisions. Um, but there's a clear path there. The nice thing about that is you have these clear decision makers who feel empowered to execute if it's effective for their business, and so that works well from that front. Another one of our customers is much more centralized, but they have a diversity of different products like power products and MCU products and wireless products and others. That company, it's um, it's a little different. So for them, what they do is they basically establish some principles at the central level, and then they allow the different product lines to do things that are as long as they're aligned with that central. So it's kind of like a central representative and a business line representative in order to do it. But it's still being rolled out on a business line by business line basis because that thing that I mentioned around the visibility and control, that by its definition is a business line function or a product line function. We are not we didn't really talk about this, but we have a predilection towards products. You'll often hear us talk about this as tech product AI. The companies that we work with, semiconductor industry, it's really all about products. It's about having products. And so our view is that it starts with the product. And so you end up having to execute the AI performance management from a product line perspective because a lot of the questions are about products, the topics are about products, the documentation is about products, and you need to manage the answers around products. So for example, one of our customers, put a fine point on it. One of our customers um, had a particular product and they said, well, if this question gets asked, you need to provide a policy answer to that question, not a factual answer to that question. I can't tell you exactly what it was, but that's a product line specific thing. And so we needed to work with that product line in order to implement that capability. Now, I'm going to kind of backtrack a little bit because often that same company has a global sales organization that spans the different product lines. So from a selling standpoint, it basically rolled out across their sales team as one. but from an AI, an application engineering, it's rolling out product line by product line. And so yeah, kind of a complex answer to a simple question, but it really depends on the org structure and the internal dynamics of the company.
Great. There's another question. How does the timeline look like for time to ROI? Guess it's similar. Yeah.
Jeff?
So here's another customer example. I mean, we can get to ROI actually in the pilot. We're rolling out tech support for one of our customers, and we basically were able to improve the efficiency of their applications engineering team by the end of the 90-day pilot. And so, I think they would say the full ROI is probably captured by or they'll or sorry, I should say a 3x ROI won't get captured for say 2 years, but we actually can start delivering value almost from day one. And I should mention our target typically for applications like tech support is a 3-to-1 ROI. So when we do our pilot, we look at what are the costs today? What is the cost of our platform? And our expectation is that we are going to increase the productivity and decrease costs such that the platform itself gives you that kind of return.
Yeah, thanks. That's a good point, Jeff. And one of the things that Jeff has done here that has been phenomenally helpful. He's been an executive at a semiconductor company, as have I, and we recognize that the only way you get conviction is through communication internally and stakeholder management. And so when we do a pilot, our typical pilot is a 3-month pilot, and at the end of that 3 months, the deliverable is a PowerPoint presentation on the company PowerPoint deck that describes what was done, data about the pilot, so what happened during the pilot, qualitative and quantitative data, and an ROI analysis of a rollout and a plan for a rollout. So a pilot is not, let's try it out and see what happens. A pilot is, let's validate whether this will deliver the ROI that we want so that we can either stop or go forward with conviction. And it's that we believe that is a critical piece of a successful pilot, because then you can actually move forward aggressively with the speed, the determination necessary to make it successful. And so that has worked extremely well for us to do those structured pilots. I think, Jeff, at this point we have 100% conversion
That's
on
great.
our pilots. And so every one of those, we basically, we're actually getting in the car right after this to present to the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar semiconductor company, and we're going to talk about ROI of their pilot. We're presenting to the board of a company next week that's about the ROI of AI for them. And so it is about ROI. This is not for fun. This is for business. And so we can deliver. We have found that we are able to deliver that ROI. Now, one of the neat things that we discovered, frankly, that has been very powerful for our business is when we started this process, we believed that the ROI of support was cost reduction, which is effectively headcount reduction, which effectively means that people are going to lose their jobs to AI. That makes people uncomfortable. It's just not what people are interested in. It turns out that is totally true in the consumer markets. If you're gonna eliminate these call center operators and reduce your cost with AI, great. In this industry, not at all true. In this industry, what we're talking about is design in and design win support, which is not, you do not want to fully automate that because it's largely about building trust and building relationships as well. So while at the low end with the long tail, it is automating to enable the long tail to work better and work faster. At the higher end, it's really about augmenting your existing people so they can spend the right time developing trust and relationships with the customers. And we believe that in this industry, that's a critical part. So the ROI of AE support is growth in the long tail, and it's improved capability in the top and middle tiers.
Do we
Cool.
have time for one more question? Maybe a quick one.
Yeah, there's one here. It's more of a comment. It says AI is beneficial, but in my experience, it is inaccurate 50% of the time. Therefore, when using in real life, it is essential to cross-check all answers. And it's equal to same as normal search in documents effects. Not sure what that last part is.
Rob, can you give a
Yeah,
talk on AI performance management in 30 seconds?
sure. In 30 seconds. Okay. So, I would go back to that slide that shows the different phases. 100% agree with you. When we were in the early phases, we found that same thing. It's really only when you start getting to the later phases that you're synthesizing data across multiple documents in order to provide better answers. And in addition to that, that AI performance management is the thing, where if you have a human in the loop, where the system can learn from those changes, and most of the basic systems don't do it. You kind of need to get to one of these later phase, more advanced systems in order to really learn from that. So the second time that question gets asked, or better, the second time a question like that gets asked, the answer is accurate. That is happening today. Jeff.
Great. That's it. Thank you for joining us today. I hope we gave you a clearer sense of what's working in the AI semiconductor industry and what you can do in the next 90 days to advance your AI efforts. Within 24 hours, you're going to get a link to today's recording. We'll send you our white paper. We'll send a link to the next webinar, and then a calendar link if you'd like to schedule a personalized AI readiness session. If we didn't get to your question today, we'll follow up with an individual email. And again, if you're ready to explore a pilot, reach out. We work with companies at all stages, from the exploring stage all the way to scaling. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to connecting with you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye
Thanks.
bye.